Namaskar. Yesterday we were talking about six substances, and we also talked about the doubt on the existence of soul. This doubt was actually raised by Gautam, who was a great Vedic scholar, but even then he had a doubt about existence of soul. So when he went to Lord Mahavira, Mahavira replied to all his doubts, and he accepted, and then he became a disciple of Mahavira, rather the chief disciple. So there should be no doubt about the existence of soul. We shall study the soul today in a little more detail. The first thing is, what is the identifying characteristics of a soul? So it is said that the identifying characteristics of soul is consciousness and manifestation of consciousness. There are two things, consciousness and its manifestation. Both are important. It's like this, suppose you have a lot of money, and if you can't use the money, what is the purpose of having money, So you must have, if you have money, you should be able to use that money. Similarly, when the soul has consciousness, the soul should be able to use the consciousness in its activities. Jain philosophy goes a step further and says that soul is consciousness. So consciousness itself is soul, the two things are not different. Soul and consciousness are one and the same thing. They are not different. So soul is consciousness itself, and consciousness also is invariably soul. So you can't separate these two terms, soul and consciousness. Soul is a non-corporeal, living, eternal, permanent, and fixed substance of the cosmic universe. These are the characteristics of the soul. Non-corporeal, it means it is non-physical. It's a living thing. It is the only substance which is living in the world. It's eternal, as we talked earlier also. It's permanent because it is eternal, and a fixed substance of the cosmic universe. It does not change this way or that way. The soul remains soul all the time. Soul is the generic name of a sentient substance. So we now expand that concept a little further. It's a generic name in the sense, there can be many souls, but they are all similar. So it's a generic name of a sentient substance. It is non-physical and sense imperceptible. It does not have the properties of color, smell, taste, and touch. So this is one special aspect of soul, that it is sense imperceptible. Our senses cannot directly identify this soul. We know the soul because of its functions, but we don't see the soul directly. It's a sense imperceptible, and it is perhaps because of this reason, that because it is not perceptible, it doesn't find acceptance in scientific investigations, because they try to prove everything in the laboratory, and this cannot be done in case of soul. So it's a sense imperceptible, a non-physical entity. Consciousness may be interpreted both as structure and function of soul. Let us try to understand this. When we talk of structure, that means what the soul consists of. It has certain structure. So consciousness is the structure of the soul. At the same time, it is also function, because the various kinds of functions are being carried out by the soul. the soul can be seen in two aspects, as a structure of the substance of which the soul is made of, and the functions which are being carried out by this particular entity in different ways. So the function is what is the manifestation, Those manifestation of the soul consciousness is in the form of functions. And the upyog, the manifestation refers only to the functional side, whereas the consciousness means both structure and function. Upyog is a technical term, you may remember, is the generality of all functions of the soul. So whatever functions are being carried out by the soul is manifestation of consciousness or upyog. What are the functions which we normally do? Our functions are either bodily functions or speech or thinking, mind, So we act in three ways, physical functions, speech and mind, thinking. So these three kinds of activities are there. There are two main manifestations or functions of consciousness. There are many, of course, but there are two main, and these are the knowing power or cognition activity and perception. So these two attributes, are the main manifestation of the consciousness, that we have a knowing power, We have a power to know ourselves, we have power to know other objects, around us. So we know everything in the world because of consciousness, manifestation of the consciousness. And perception, we perceive things. First we perceive and then we know, This is the order in which the functions act. We first perceive a particular scene or particular object and then know about the scene or know about the object. So these two take place in this particular order. So these are regarded as the main functions of the soul, Or other way around, if these functions are not there, then the thing is not soul. Because whenever there is soul, it will have the power of perception and cognition, So if anything which doesn't have these attributes is not soul, you can directly say that. So the table doesn't have these attributes. Your table doesn't perceive anything or doesn't know anything, So that way. And both of them are comprehensions of object by the subject, So we comprehend a particular object or any object around us. So, of course, these are the two main functions, but there are others, which will come across. Consciousness in mundane soul manifests itself in several ways. Now, here it is. It manifests as intelligence, knowledge, awareness, intuition, bliss, perception, emotions, will, attitude and behavior, feelings of pleasure and pain, and so on. All these things which you are talking of is because of consciousness. If there were no consciousness, then these things will not exist. That means for the intelligence we possess is because of the consciousness of the soul. The knowledge we have is because of consciousness, awareness or perception, intuition, bliss. We experience bliss, and the bliss is the property of soul, in fact, and that is why we experience bliss. Emotions, we all have emotions, and there is no one who is free of emotions. The emotions also because of the consciousness of the soul. Without that, the emotions will not take place. Will to do something, that is because that's also consciousness. We always are willing to do this and that, and this body is not willing. It is the consciousness of the soul who is willing, and body means a means to act according to the will. Attitude and behavior, this also is because of consciousness, and the feeling of pleasure and pain. The body doesn't feel the pleasure and pain. It is the soul consciousness that feels the pleasure and pain. So the consciousness is having, because of consciousness, we have all these attributes in our life. The activities of soul are reflected in it. They leave impression on soul. This is an important concept. Suppose the soul is engaged in some kind of activity, whether body activity or speech or mental activity. The question is, when we are doing all these activities, do these activities leave a record in the soul? The answer is yes. And this record, which is kept of the activities, you can say broadly in two forms. One, memory. We talked about it last time also. It is the only soul that has memory, and that stores memory. So whatever activities we are engaged in, information record is kept in our soul in the form of memory. That is one form in which the soul remembers the activities which are being done. There is another way which is known as a karma. Karma is also a kind of a record, but it is a little different type. This record is such that this record will bear fruit in future. So whatever activity the soul is doing, the soul will have to bear consequences of this act in future. So the soul is, doesn't go scot-free. It has to face the consequences of what it is doing, what the soul is doing. And this is because of a kind of record which is a kind of permanent. Not permanent, it's not eternal, but it remains for certain duration of time in the soul, and then at an appropriate time the soul has to face the consequences of these actions. And that is the crux of the problem. That is, we can't go scot-free of what we are doing. If you are doing something bad, we will have to face bad consequences in future. If you are doing something good, you will have good consequences in future. This is because of a record kept in the soul in the form of karma. So the activities forms a kind of impression on the soul. So this goes into the structural aspect of the soul. So the impression is there in the soul in the form of karma. Now this is one kind of record the soul keeps. There is another form of record which the soul also keeps, and that is in the form of a fine material body which is called karma body. And that also contains the impression of these actions. So what is this body? It's a new thing for you. It is coming for the first time in this lecture. So what happens is that when the soul is performing some activity, and as I said, impression is being made on the soul, simultaneously there is some kind of subtle matter which is present in the surroundings, because it is present in the entire cosmos. That matter is drawn into our body and stays there. And this matter which is flowing in also carries the same impression which the soul carries, and the impression is of the activities, So there are two forms in which the information is being kept, one inside the soul, another in this subtle matter which is flowing into the body. And this flowing in matter constitutes a kind of body around the soul, and that remains with the soul all the time. So we have a subtle Karman body that consists of karma, as I told you, and this Karman body remains with the soul all the time. So long as karmas exist, the Karman body remains with the soul. It is attached to the soul, and cannot be separated out. This is the kind of property these things have. So then this body, which is attached to soul, goes with the soul. When the soul transfers from one body to another body on death, then this body also goes along with the soul to the new body. And this is how continuity in the life of soul is maintained, because the Karman body is going along with the soul from one body to another, and therefore all the previous memories, all the previous karmas are being carried forward from one life to another, and the first life to second, second to third, and so on. And this has been happening right from beginningless time. I told you the soul is eternal. Soul is not created. And this karma body has been attached to the soul from beginningless time. That is, the soul has never been free of Karman body. It has always been attached to Karman body. Always, So, and the soul was never free of Karman body, it was never free. It has always been like this. So, that means, all the records of our activities have been carried out, from one life to another and so on. Unless these karmas are removed or annihilated, in some way, which we will talk later. The soul has always been infested with karma. That means, and it is because of karma that the soul acquires a body. What I am trying to say is that if this soul were pure, I am just taking a hypothetical example. If the soul were pure, then it wouldn't have a body attached to it. If the soul is attached with karma, then the soul has a body. So the body exists because of karma and not because of soul. That's a very important point. Because the soul has karma, and therefore the soul has body. So body and karma are related, If there are karma, there will be body. If there is no karma, there will be no body. Like that. So these karmas have a peculiar effect on soul, As I said, the soul experiences effect of karma in future, So these karmas will bear fruit after some time, not immediately. When you do some activities and suppose the karmas are attached to the soul, it doesn't affect the soul immediately. It takes certain time, a duration. So for certain duration of time, these karmas remain inactive or dormant. They don't show their effect on the soul. After a certain duration of time, they will show effect on the soul, and the soul will experience the effects of karma. And that is why we have all the experiences. We in our life have different kinds of experiences. Okay, this is because of our past karma. If past karma didn't exist, then we won't have these kinds of experiences. Experiences will be of a very different kind. We will talk about it later on. So all our experiences and all these properties which we talked of, intelligence, knowledge, awareness, perception, emotions, attitude, behavior, feeling of pleasure and pain, they are all because of karma. All souls in this universe undergo effects such as sorrow, happiness, birth, death, etc., so long as they are afflicted by karma. As I said, it is because of karma that these events are happening. A pure soul doesn't have sorrow or happiness. It has a feeling of bliss, which is the natural property of the soul. It experiences only bliss. The sorrow and happiness is because of karma. Birth and death is because of karma. I have been born as a human being, you have been born as a human being, and you were in some other form in your last life which you don't know. And what will be in the form of life, in the near future, when this body dies, what will be the form? We don't know. But all these things are decided by karma. So karma is a very important principle in Jainism, and this in fact is the central theme of Jain philosophy. All principles which we talk of in Jain philosophy center around the theory of karma, and that theory of karma can explain all the events, all the happenings in our life. So it's a very strong theory, and at the same time very important to understand, because that governs our life. Souls who get emancipated from these effects of karma are designated as liberated. Paramatma or Siddha, these two terms are used in Jain philosophy. So, because now we know that all the events which are happening in our life are because of karma, and if you get rid of karma in some way, which is not easy, we talk about it later, but if this happens, if we get rid of karma, then the soul is emancipated. It is free of karma effects, and in that state the soul is called liberated. So the soul has been liberated from karma and from matter as such, So the soul is also liberated from matter, Then it has no more contact with matter of any kind, either subtle or gross. So it will not have a karma, it will not have a body also, So a liberated soul is bodiless. It's in the pure state. And in that state, it experiences bliss, and its knowledge is perfect. So there are two main attributes of soul, what we call as a Gyan and Darshan. That is, Gyan is actually not knowledge, it is power of knowing and the power of intelligence, and that is infinite. The soul possesses infinite Gyan, infinite power of knowledge or infinite power of cognition, an infinite power of perception, darshan, These are infinite. So a pure soul would have such qualities, in such a state it will be that it would experience infinite cognition power, infinite. So which means that this pure soul knows everything in the world, There is nothing which is unknown to a pure soul. And it experiences bliss. So such souls are known as a Paramatma or Siddha in philosophical terms. Life and consciousness are coextensive. Wherever there is life, there is consciousness, and wherever there is consciousness, there is life. They are coextensive. All organisms have consciousness. This is important. Not only the human beings, but all animals, all insects, all plants, all bacteria. Every organism has consciousness and life and soul. But there are degrees of explicitness or manifestation of consciousness. These different kinds of organisms, which we are talking, will have a different extent of manifestation of consciousness. For example, trees, their consciousness is explicit to a very small extent. Very small consciousness is explicit in plants and trees, as compared to, for example, other animals, and then as compared to human beings and so on. There is a hierarchy of living organisms, as far as the manifestation of consciousness is concerned. There are organisms which have least consciousness, and there are organisms which have almost maximum consciousness among the living organisms. So the bacteria, for example, it could be said that has the least consciousness expressed, and the human beings on the highest side, we have the maximum consciousness expressed. So we are intelligent beings, we have thinking power, and we can do so many things which other animals cannot do. It is because of the larger amount of consciousness which is expressed in our body. But all organisms have consciousness, small or large, or small or big, but they have all consciousness. And in the lowest class, as I said, it is very much latent, and in the human beings it is very much manifest. I explained. Soul is entirely distinct from inanimate matter. Matter does not have consciousness, and therefore soul is entirely different. So we must always keep in mind that the body and soul are different. They are two different entities, one having consciousness, other does not have. And there are infinite souls in the cosmos. One can ask this question, how many souls are there? There are infinite souls in the cosmos. The souls are present at every point in space. They are in very subtle form, but they are there. But we can't see them. We see only the gross form of bodies, the souls. We can't see even bacteria, You have to see them with the help of microscope. But bacteria has a life, and it has a soul. So souls are of all different kinds, and we'll study these different kinds of soul in one of the lectures. Life essentials of worldly souls are senses. So all worldly souls will have senses, 1 to 5. There are 5 senses. Then mental, vocal, and bodily activities. So all organisms will engage this kind of activity, more or less, in a more, some maybe in more extent, some in a less extent, but all the activities are there. Then besides that, all life have a duration, and duration, it lives for a certain period of time, and each organism has a respiration. Respiration means it inhales oxygen. There are maybe organisms we probably do not require oxygen. There is a kind of oxygen, but normally, otherwise, all organisms have the function of respiration. Soul is identical with body. So one may ask, where is the soul? The soul is here inside the body, and the size of the soul is the same as the size of the body. So the soul attains the size of the body. So for example, when we are born, we have a very small size of body, then soul occupies that size of the body. As we grow and as the body grows, so also does the size of the soul. The soul also grows in the same proportion. So soul occupies the body. That's number one. And number two, soul can occupy the body of any organism. For example, it can occupy the body of an ant, or it can occupy the body of an elephant. It is the same soul. And it does not make any difference as far as the nature of soul is concerned, whether it's the soul of an ant or whether it's the soul of an elephant. The nature of the soul is same, exactly. It's only the size is changing according to the size of the body. The embodied soul appears as the same as the body, but it's not really so. We can't make distinction between soul and body. As I said, the soul extends the space of the body, and so it appears as if the body is the soul, because the body now acts, on behalf of the soul, So the body is acting, So we conceive in this manner, like, look here, the body is soul, but it's not like this. The soul and body, though appear to be same, but they are different, and they maintain different identity. As I told you earlier also, one substance cannot become another substance. They have a property like this. So soul will never become body, and body will never become soul. On death, body is left over. Soul does not die. It takes up a new body. So you must understand the phenomena of death and birth. When who dies? The body dies. The soul does not die. The soul is eternal. So if the body is dead, the soul leaves this body and occupies another body. And so soul is never dead. It is the body which dies. So birth and death must be defined with respect to body and not with respect to soul. So there is a life in the body so long as the soul is present. And so long as my soul is here in this body looks alive. This body looks alive. The moment the soul leaves, this body will appear dead. So body is dead when the soul departs. Dimension, extension of the soul decreases and increases. I explained to you according to the size of the body. It can occupy any size without making the difference in the true nature of the soul itself. So this change does not affect the fundamental substantiality of the soul. Its basic essence remains unchanged. So the soul of an ant is having all those attributes, which we can think of as we have, or as the plant has, or an elephant has. So the soul nature is not changed. This is very important because people may confuse sometimes. Souls are existent in every iota of space in the universe. I told you, at every point a soul is present, but in a very subtle form. What is this form? We will talk when we study biology. But the soul is present at every point in space, across the entire cosmos. So there is no space free of soul in the cosmos, remember. So how many souls could be there? Now just imagine. All living organisms have similar potential powers and abilities. That means, the potential power of soul of a plant, or soul of a bacteria, or a soul of a human being, potentially there is no difference. only difference is between the extent to which the consciousness is manifesting in these bodies. It's manifesting to a minimum level, for example, in the case of bacteria, but that does not mean potentially the soul is same. So it comes out to be like this, that suppose you kill a bacteria and you kill a human being, potentially you have done the same amount of sin. Okay? So that is why, even going to the extremes, there are people in the Jain philosophy or in Jain religion who take care of killing of even very small insects or even small beings. They don't want to kill anything, even the subtlemost things, because that is violence. So killing a bacteria or plucking away the plants or plucking away herbs or killing even small ant or worm is violence. So the violence can be of any form, and that is why one has to be very cautious and take precautions in conduct, and this aspect goes into the practice part of Jain religion, which we will talk sometime later. So what we have discussed today is about soul, what soul is and what are its properties, in what way we know the soul, what are the effects of soul, what is the concept of karma, which is very important to Jain philosophy, and what is the relation between karma and soul, and these kinds of things, So we stop here today, and in the next lecture we will talk about some other substances. Thank you.